This is my tribute to Ama Ata Aidoo that I presented at the just concluded annual meeting of the African Studies Association in San Francisco. It wasn't recorded, and I want to kind of record it and put it in public space. So, Ama Ata Aidoo, a tribute. Let me begin by quoting from a 1992 interview of Ama Ata Aidoo by Anuranda Dingwani Nidam. Ama Ata Aidoo, because this gives a bit of a biography, Ama Ata Aidoo has occupied and continues to occupy many roles. Former Minister of Education for Ghana, university teacher, critic, writer of poetry, plays, novels, and short stories. The brutal legacy of European colonialism in Africa, a gender politics that marginalizes women and locks them into unacceptable traditional roles, the persistence of neo-colonialism, evident especially in the economic control of Africa by the very powers that colonized Africa, are some of the concerns that dominate her work. They reappear in this interview, which I'm not going to share with you, that was conducted at Hamilton College. I just want you to know it was at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York on January 29, 1992. Ama Ata Aidoo spent 1991 to 1992 at Hamilton College as a visiting professor in the Department of English. And there's also an excerpt from a 1991 interview at Brown University that talks also about her biography. It says, Ama Ata Aidoo is an internationally recognized and acclaimed literary and intellectual figure. She has published many plays, novels, collections of short stories and poems since her first play, The Dilemma of a Ghost, in 1965. She was born in 1945 into the family of a chief in the Fanti town of Abiadzikiayo. I'm sure I'm murdering the language, but I'm sure I'll be forgiven. In the central region of Ghana, then called by its colonial name, the Gold Coast. And she grew up in the royal household. Her privileged origins are reflected in her education and career. She attended the Wesley Girls High School in Cape Coast and was at the University of Ghana, Legon from 1961 to 1964. During this time, Aidoo worked in the University School of Drama and Writers' Workshop and produced her first two plays and a collection of short stories. She has continued to write professionally and also has pursued a career teaching, reading, and lecturing at universities in West and East Africa and the United States. At times, she has also held influential educational and political positions, such as Minister of Education in Ghana under Jerry Rawlings in the early 1980s. Under Jerry Rawlings' government in the early 1980s, and consulting professor to the Washington Bureau of the Phelps Stokes Fund's Ethnic Studies Program from 1974 to 1975. This is from Marangoli, George, Scott, and Aidoo. It was published in 1993. So here to what I had to say. So I met Ama Ata Aidoo mostly through her work. I read our sister Killjoy very early on. And I've also used her Chances, a love story, in a course. I'm inspired by her clarity, forthrightness, courage, and confidence. Her conviction and commitment impressed me. I've heard her speak at a few conferences, the African Studies Association annual meetings, and the Organization of African Women Writers, Yari Yari Pamberi. She was brilliant and impressive. At a Brown University conference, the one where I took the second excerpt from in 1991, she was asked the following question. One aspect of this conference that has drawn some criticism is the way that different writers have been presented as representatives, in quote, of their countries. Why do you think this happens? And what is your response? Ama Ata Aidoo said, it is really inevitable in a situation like this that writers become representatives of their countries. In a world in which everything was equal, writers would not represent anything other than themselves. But in 1991, everything is far than equal in this world. And those inequalities are particularly heightened in the African world. Most Africans are not in a position to write or speak of their lives, and we few writers who do have that chance become representatives. On one level, some of us will play this role, partly because there's a key awareness that, for example, people on this campus, that is Brown University, do not know much about Africa and the different countries that we represent. More generally, there's an onus to write of a larger group of people than ourselves, so this becomes the best that can be done. Here is a Ghanaian, here is a Nigerian, here is a Zimbabwean, and so on and so on. We are here to tell you about our world, our environment. But to what extent can any of us writers talk on the behalf of the people? There's no reason that we would be qualified to do so. If we are not clear-sighted or clear-thinking, and we show our confusions, there is a danger of misrepresentation. Then, of course, an environment like Brown is privileged, which is why it can afford to host multicultural events like these. There is no reciprocity of benefits. You bring us to Brown, but our institutions, that is those in Africa, do not have the money to bring international academics to Africa or to build our institutions to a level where many students can study. So it is a one-way traffic. This is the end of the quote. In her novels, I say, Ama Ata Aidoo gives us her distinctive perspective that is critical, deep, complex, complicated, compelling, yet witty, deep, interesting, and thoughtful. Also thought-provoking. She was a nationalist and Pan-Africanist, not only in theory, but in praxis. Her friendships and associational relationships were testament to her firm commitment to the ethical and idealistic principles espoused in theory. My Auntie Rashida, who knew her well, unequivocally attests to this. So Auntie Rashida, when I was going to the ASA when Ama just died, Auntie Rashida wrote a tribute, and I will share it with you momentarily. So I just want to say, contrary to popular belief, I'm shy. So I watched Ama Ata Aidoo from afar. but she was a great friend and contemporary of my Auntie Rashida, a woman from Benin, Republic of Benin and Nigeria, whose tribute I shared with the Women's Caucus. Here it is. This is now Auntie Rashida's tribute that I want to read into the record because it's really great. So it is titled, On Reading the Sad News, Ama Ata Aidoo, 23 March 1942 to 31 May 2023, by Rashida Ismaili. And she goes, just after reading the New York Times art section, where I see the continued resistance to returning stolen art that is in the museums of the United Kingdom, as I feel with rage at the arrogance of colonialism, at the condensation of what tries to mask as an art-sensitive gesture in offering to lend a few pieces of Benin, that is the Kingdom of Benin in Nigeria, icons looted centuries ago. I read the obituaries, and there is the announcement of my dear sister in arms of Pan-African struggles and literary integrity for the continent and her children. Dead. How to process this? Dead after a short illness, this dynamic spirit of blazing eyes, searing brilliance, a force to be reckoned with, gone into the finite place of no return, of no access. How to speak to the silence of space that separates the living from the dead, her to me. The distance grows with each passing person who used to walk this earth with me. Laugh with me, read to me, and speak to the urgent need to be strong, vigilant in our quest for African autonomy and excellence. Telephones will not bring her voice to me, laughing and crying at men's folly, the cruelty of misogynists, racists, classism, exploitation, and misappropriation of institutions of education, government, theological, and every manner of oppression the human mind has created. All. How to show all this decades later, modern devices notwithstanding, the huge smile that greeted me over half a century ago when I was on my way home for class, carrying a grocery bag and my notebook on Bleecker Street in the village, just about to turn west on Morton Street, where I lived with my very young son, when Ama Ata smiled with open arms, blocking my path. Oh, how lovely! The inflection in her voice told me she was West African, and it put me at ease. I stopped and we embraced on that street filled with people going to and fro, in front of a bakery shop that made the best bread. And if you were around at 11 o'clock at night, when they were loading the delivery trucks, you could get a free loaf of still warm bread. That is it, how it started. This sisterhood circa 1963. She was visiting on a fellowship and I was in grad school, a single mother raising a male child. It turned out we had a mutual friend who lived nearby and who worked at the mission. And we met there on many occasions as he had parties for the sake of having Pan-African exchanges with continental Africans and Africans from the diaspora. We were budding artists, writers, and thought of ourselves as thinkers, philosophers, intellectual young pioneers. We were devoted to Dr. Nkrumah's vision of the new Africa, and the African youth who would go out into the world, gather another set of knowledge, come back home, and integrate the new learning with the old and forge a path that would lead to the total reformation of Africa, where tribalism would not be a means of division, but rather of broadening our understanding of what it meant to be simply an African. Oh, my dear sister, how often we cried at the disappointment of our dreams, at the intractable position of some of our most learned men and women. Still, you wrote your words of condemnation, of inspiration, and created plays, poetry, and fiction, all for us to hear and experience the wonders of your gifts. The pain at being called a tool of Western education and other such nonsense, most hurting to not be understood for the message you and me we brought. Still, you fought on and on. I know how painful it was for you to resign your position of Minister of Education and then go to Zimbabwe. Fortunately, you found happiness there in real human terms. Your daughter was born, and later your first grandson. Back home, you continued your work, writing, forming a foundation, and then we came together to create the Organization of Women Writers of Africa, OWWA. You and Jane Cortez were co-chairs. I was the treasurer. And then we went on to plot out two incredible conferences. The first of its kind, where women of African descent came together and we shared experiences, writing methods, food, and laughter. We were joyous and inspiring in our celebrations with our men of distinction. Always, you were a dynamic source of knowledge and fun. Now, how to navigate the loss, the emptiness, the void of your voice and wisdom, along with Jane Cortez, Amiri Baraka, Nawal Al-Sadawi, Kamau Braithwaite, George Laming, and so many others who said the words, took the positions, owned the podiums of the world. This void that chokes me and sometimes leaves me without adequate words to shape the thoughts I am having and a response to the world events we witness daily. The march of self-destruction of so many of our leaders and youth chasing after torn jeans and multicolored wigs for an identity that denigrates and denies the Africanity of their history. How do we extol the strong who maintain their artistic and intellectual integrity, encourage them when many are in need of housing, a respectful venue, and honest benefactors? And yet, dear sister, we must continue somehow without you. Max Roach, Willie Osi Kostis, Sile, Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masakela, Sibongile Kumalo, Randy Weston, Esther Cooper Jackson, Harry Belafonte, all who have left their indelible marks on the cultural and human landscape. So I want to promise to be auntie for your daughter and go for the young men, your grandsons. I promise to write as honestly as possible without your sharp critique. I promise to be a true Pan-Africanist and advocate for women and indeed for the human species as we struggle to make this world a home of art that inspires the best of us, the best of each of us, To the children of Africa, sing your songs and sing praise for Ama Ata Aidoo and all those now silent voices. Read their works, listen to their records, look at their art in museums and books. Be inspired, make your mark. Don't let death take away the challenge and love, the smiles and urgings of those now quiet. Be artistically, intelligently, respectfully, noisy. So that's the end of Auntie Rashida's tribute. And now, then she says, sleep in grace, my dear, smiling, brilliant one. So here ends Auntie Rashida's tribute. And then I resume my own presentation. Although I believe that Ama Ata Aidoo died much too soon, I also know, as we all do, that death is inevitable. Since it is a certainty, one has to accept it. I even embrace its inevitability. I am Yoruba, and I'm influenced by the belief that we are in an unending circle that binds together the unborn, the living, and the dead. The dead are not gone forever. They are with us, the living in the spirit. It is even believed by the Yoruba that we can and do encounter them, and that they can be reincarnated. Being such an illustrious writer, poet, scholar, and all-around Renaissance woman, Ama Ata Aidoo also left a beautiful and brilliant record in the body of work that she produced. We are also blessed to have a number of interviews that gave an account of how she thought, what she said, and the beliefs she espoused. These also live on as a legacy of her greatness. So in this life well lived, we can draw inspiration on how to live well too, as ethical, principled, dignified, and good people. In doing our work with commitment, courage, clarity, daring to speak truth to power, in affirming commitment to sisterhood, building durable and loving relationships and communities, we leave a mark on those around us. Ama Ata Aidoo did this, and she did it with excellence. Her work, as aforementioned, is a great legacy, strands of which have inspired and are bound to continue inspiring numerous scholars and students and people who are none of the above. Her courage gives us a model worth emulating. Her sense of humor is the icing on the cake. Yorubas also believe that it's possible to die well. One dies well when you leave successful offspring behind. Note that due to the institution of fictive kinship, one's offspring do not have to be born by one. They aren't necessarily blood relations. One also dies well when you have worked hard and have something to show for it. One dies well when they've been courageous, ethical, and committed to excellence. One dies well when you have touched people's lives through your work, actions, behavior, and perspectives. Ama Ata Aidoo has done this. No doubt she has died well. We will definitely meet her on this side of reality, but she lives on in her work. The never-ending circle is unbroken. Let us salute Ama Ata Aidoo for living well and dying well. So, Ama Ata Aidoo, Odigbere, ó dàrinà kò, ó dojú àlà, má jọ̀kùn, má jẹ kòló, ohun tí wọ́n bá ń jẹ lọ́run ni kó máa jẹ. And for the non-Yoruba speakers, I do this translation. It's now goodbye. Chance meetings. Meeting in the dream world. Don't eat centipedes. Don't eat earthworms. Only eat what they eat in heaven. So this was a tribute in 3 parts. And I'm now going to read another piece. And this piece is titled, These Days, number 3, a letter to Flora Nwakpa. It was a tribute to Flora Nwakpa that was written when she died by Ama Ata Aidoo. So here, dear Flora, do you know just how much I miss you these days? Which these days is constant in hot arguments, in the classroom or out, with neophyte, overindulged, underdisciplined, much privileged, rather patronizing, sadly silly, misinformed, non-African youths the world over. We shall not mention the R word just yet. Who insists to me, oh Flora, how a fool is too astute, unreal, too independent, mythical, not at all like what they know about us, African women. My sister, it would make you laugh or smile so winningly, the way only you knew how, comforting me with, don't mind them. Ah, Ama, what do they know? Ah, Flora, what do they know? What on earth would anyone know in these places about the women and men you knew so well, lived, loved, and worked with? The mothers who bore you, the age mates you laughed with, the sisters you respected, those you raised, the students you taught, the ones who read you, whose kids you wrote for, who wrote for you, and whom you published, and for whom you published. What on earth does anyone know, young or old, who never ever met you and now never will? No fat chance in this hell we call life. And the youths at home, sure, they might be knowing what you knew, but what use is any kind of awareness, imprisoned in chaos or nothingness? It's the same old, different tale. We have abandoned them to grow on the world's garbage. Real, surreal, symbolic. Global cast-offs hastily assembled. Weaselly wheat and expired drugs. And they play with toys whose potential for good or evil they have not been schooled to grasp. My sister, Africa's children have been abandoned by us. The so-called living, the dead, the indifferent, the greedy, who dreaming or awake don't see, hear, or smell, don't understand, don't seem to grasp that power is not about beating us down and selling the common wealth for cobbles only, lining our pockets and the pockets of our relatives. If it comes to that, how many houses can we live in, even with our relatives? How much food can we eat? How many grand bumbus can we wear? Danshiki, fugu, busuti, nkente. How many young girls can one man have? How many cars? How many? How much? There you come again, Flora. Ama, relax. What else is new? What is new, my dear sister? Our wicked advise deadly methods to finish off Africa's youth. The order is in. Starve them out, educate them less, house them poorly, deny them work, let them rot, let them rot, let them rot, let them rot where they were born, or let them try to run and die. Oh, Flora, I just wish you were here to assure me again that everything will be okay one day, you'll see. Do you know how much I miss you these days? My friend of the skin that came perfectly blended from a water goddess's cauldron, lustrous, shimmering, full-bodied. Did you ever observe your own arms, hands, and fingers as you wove dainty gestures that hopefully but barely gave strength to query your quietly spoken words? But it was the neck, Flora. It was that neck which made strong men weak and frail men brave. A piece of contradictory African art, long on a short body, and ringed and fascinatingly ringed. Then there were all those elegantly impossible feats. Only Flora would attempt to scale Hero's Acre in a tight skirt and high heels, but you did it. My sister, out of this imperial language that we have to deal with and which so often fails us when we need to speak of ourselves, our hearts, and other spaces close to us. Someone has plucked gracious to describe the woman that was you. How odd to even think of you only as a being that once was. Our gracious lady, who had Mary's child. If it is true, the dead have powers beyond our mortal selves, then please, Flora, do not forget what you so untimely left behind. Your barely begot and all Africa's children whose future lies under the boots of those who have never wished our peoples well. Flora, for us to now stop kinning is to hope you would intercede with the great Chukwu and those that went before, for that necessary but elusive power to free ourselves and those who come after us. Please, Flora. And that's the end of my presentation. May the soul of Ama Ata Aidoo and Flora Nwakpa and our foremothers who have been fierce in speaking up and writing and inspiring us, may their souls rest in peace. Thank you.